Did Jesus really come back to life?
That's a good question, and my favourite kind of objection, because it's a question rather than an objection. Obviously, as a Christian, I think that Jesus did come back from the dead and is now alive. But the question of did he do that, how do we know that, is a central one to Christianity. The first thing to say before I get into that is really I want to point out that in Jesus' world and Jesus' day, people were not looking for the resurrection of one man in the middle of human history. Jesus was a Jew, his followers were Jewish, and as such, Jewish people were not looking for the resurrection of one man. They were waiting for the resurrection of all people at the end of human history, at the culmination of all things when God was going to wrap everything up and recreate the world. That's what Jesus' followers were looking forward to in the resurrection sense. And in the pagan and kind of Greek religious world of the time as well, they would never have wanted the resurrection from the dead, because for them the spirit and the soul is kind of encased and trapped inside a body that at death it's released from that captivity, that prison. And so the idea that someone would come back to life in a body was just abhorrent and a horrible idea to their minds. And so that's to say really that people weren't looking for the resurrection from the dead. It wasn't like people were going around going, this is the Messiah because he's been raised, this is the Messiah because he's been raised. No, it just wasn't something people were expecting. And so in answering the question, it's worth pointing out that historians agree on the fact that the tomb that Jesus was buried in is in fact empty, and it was empty 3 days after he was buried. And so the question then comes, so what are the explanations for the emptiness of Jesus' tomb? And to answer that question, there's really only 5 kind of plausible or semi-plausible ideas. Let me just run through them very quickly. The first explanation for the empty tomb is that Jesus' disciples stole the body. You know, that men who weren't looking for resurrection and who weren't trained kind of assassins certainly overpowered some Roman soldiers that were guarding the tomb, rolled back a stone, stole the body and, hid it somewhere. The second explanation is that the authorities, the religious leaders of the day, stole the body. And when Jesus' followers started spouting out about resurrection theories and Jesus being alive, they just forgot they had it and kind of left it in a locker somewhere, as they never revealed the body. The third explanation is that Jesus didn't really die, that on the cross he just kind of looked like he was dead, but wasn't actually dead. And in the middle of the night, he rolled back the stone that was guarding the entrance to the tomb, overpowered the soldiers that were there, and made for the hills and never came back. And apart from in resurrection appearances where he was kind of glowing and radiant and very healthy just a few days later. And the fourth explanation, which is kind of really the sexist theory, that is the women who discovered the empty tomb, they went to the wrong tomb. On Easter Sunday, they got lost. They didn't have the first century sat-nav or equivalent and went to the wrong tomb. And everyone after them also went to the wrong tomb. So those are the first 4 theories. The fifth theory as to why the tomb was empty is the one that personally I go for, and it's the idea that Jesus was in fact raised from the dead to new life. And that's why we celebrate that as Christians on Easter Sunday, and that's why I'm a Christian, because I think Jesus has conquered the grave and is alive.